This happened not long ago when I moved into a small town. I was hoping to take a break from my fast-paced corporate job. I wanted some peace and solitude, plus inspiration for my paintings. After a rough breakup, I thought this could be a fresh start. The town was quiet, and I liked that. I'm not sure if I should have trusted that quiet. On my third night in the modest house I rented, I started hearing a soft tapping sound from the basement. At first, I thought it was just the building creaking. I tried to ignore it, but it kept coming back. It distracted me while I painted at my kitchen table. I got up a few times to check, but found nothing. Still, the noise felt like it was lingering around me, like a shadow. As the days passed, the tapping grew louder. I could hear it even over my music and the sound of my brush on the canvas. It felt like it was trying to get my attention. I glanced out the window and saw my neighbors watching me from their yards. They stood there, staring, before quickly looking away if I caught them. It felt strange. Maybe they weren't used to newcomers. One afternoon, I found small, painted rocks on my doorstep. At first, I thought they were cute. I picked them up, but the drawings made no sense. They looked like faces or animals, but they seemed off somehow. I didn't remember seeing any kids around, so I tossed the rocks into a box without thinking. The tapping didn't let up. Then came that night. I heard laughter coming from the basement. It was muffled and distant, but unmistakable. My heart raced, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I crept toward the basement door, half expecting it to open, but it stayed shut. I grabbed the doorknob, but I hesitated. Maybe it was just my imagination. I turned away, deciding some things are better left untouched. The next few days were weirder. Each morning, I'd discover more rocks at my door, each with stranger drawings. Those neighbors. Their stares felt heavier, like they were waiting for something. Each night, I heard the tapping again, no matter how loud I turned up the music. I don't remember when I began to feel that weight, but I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. Then one night, things changed. The laughter echoed again, clearer this time. I took a deep breath and looked at the basement door. I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my chest. Suddenly, I realized, who or what was down there. I didn't have the answer. But when I turned back toward the kitchen, I felt it. I wasn't alone in the house anymore. I still think about it, the tapping, the laughter. I don't know if I'll ever find out the truth. I still hear it sometimes, even now. What I felt that night. I can't shake it. The memory haunts me, and the quiet still feels wrong. I woke up the next morning feeling uneasy. The laughter still echoed in my mind like a haunting melody, and I struggled to shake the feeling that someone had brushed past me in the night. I tried to focus on my paintings, but the vibrant colors on my canvas felt dull compared to the turmoil in my gut. After breakfast, I decided that enough was enough. I needed to face what was going on in my basement. I stood in front of the door again, ruminating on the events of the previous night. Each second felt like an eternity. I finally mustered the courage to twist the doorknob and push the door open. It creaked as it swung wide, revealing a dark staircase leading down. I couldn't see anything beyond the first few steps, and the air was thick with dust. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen, my heart racing as I descended the stairs. Each step felt heavy, as if the house itself were reluctant to let me go further. I reached the bottom and swept the beam of light across the room. It was bare, with damp walls and old wooden beams that looked like they were about to crumble. And then I saw it. At the far end lay a child's drawing tacked to the wall. My heart sank as I approached it. The image was chaotic scribbles mixed with faces that seemed too big for their bodies, eyes wide and staring. My stomach twisted at the sight. I turned to leave, but I heard something, a soft giggle, just above a whisper. I froze. There it was again. I whipped around, but the room was silent. I took a deep breath, trying to tell myself it was all in my head. I turned the flashlight toward the far wall, ready to search for any sign of movement. That's when I noticed something on the floor, a small, painted rock, identical to the ones I had found at my doorstep. My skin prickled. It was violet, and on its smooth surface was a face, a grin that sent shivers down my spine. Then I heard it again, the laughter, now louder, and it echoed off the walls. My instinct screamed at me to run. I dashed back up the stairs, slamming the door behind me, and leaned against it, desperately trying to catch my breath. The laughter faded, but the terror stayed with me. Later that day, I saw the neighbors outside, their eyes trained on me again. This time, I decided to approach them. I walked over, my pulse quickening. "Hey! Could you tell me about the history of this house?" I forced a smile. Their faces turned to stone. "No one really talks about it," one finally said, barely meeting my gaze. "Things don't end well for those who dig too deep." I laughed nervously, trying to lighten the mood. Just trying to settle in. But they didn't laugh. They stared back, heavy with unspoken knowledge. I felt the chill in their silence, and a weight of dread settled over me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The tapping returned, punctuated by more laughter that chilled me to the bone. I closed my eyes, praying for dawn to come. But then I heard it again, clearer now, a whisper that slipped through the darkness. "Come play with us." My heart raced in the quiet. I wasn't alone now, not at all. What did they want from me? I dared to breathe in, hearing the tapping turn into a rhythmic thud. Someone was in the house. But where? I held my breath, straining to listen over the pounding of my heart. The rhythmic thud came again, closer now, like footsteps advancing through the shadows. My mind raced. I should call someone, but who? I was new here, and the neighbors had already freaked me out. I resolved to confront the sound instead. With each careful step, I moved from my bedroom to the hallway, flashlight in hand. The beam sliced through the darkness, illuminating dust motes that floated like tiny ghosts. As I approached the living room, I steeled myself. The sound stopped. It was hauntingly quiet. I took another step, then paused. A flicker of movement caught my eye. I swung the flashlight toward the thick curtain covering the window. It shifted slightly, as if someone was behind it. My gut twisted. "Is anyone there?" I called, trying to keep my voice steady. The only response was silence, thick and oppressive. I walked closer. My breath came in shallow gasps, and I can still remember how my skin felt clammy against my clothes. Just as I reached out to pull the curtain aside, a loud crash echoed from the basement. I jumped, the flashlight beam shaking wildly. The noise sounded like something toppling over, something heavy. Without thinking, I darted back toward the basement door. I was scared, but I had to see what was happening. I gripped the doorknob tightly, heart thudding in my chest again. I opened it, fighting the instinct to bolt. I summoned every ounce of courage I had left and descended the steps once more. The air felt denser than before, and the darkness loomed like a thick fog. As I reached the bottom, my light flickered before settling on an array of old boxes, some overturned. My brain raced with possibilities. Had an animal gotten in? I scanned the ground, checking for anything out of place. That's when my flashlight revealed a figure crouched in the corner, barely illuminated by the thin beam, small, with ragged clothes. I froze, not knowing whether to run or confront whatever that was. But before I could decide, the child turned around, and the grin from the violet rock flashed across the face of the thing before me. It was a girl, but her eyes were glazed and unseeing, and a giggle escaped her lips. "Come play with us," she echoed, her voice a sinister chant that filled the room. I stumbled back, bumping into the wall, the realization dawning on me with icy dread: this wasn't just a figment of my imagination. I turned to flee, but as I did, I heard more laughter start to resonate from every corner of the basement. My instinct screamed to escape. Panic surged through me, driving me up the stairs with my feet seemingly weightless. But the laughter followed me like a shadow, a dozen whispers weaving through the air. I slammed the door shut again, breathing heavily. My mind whirled with confusion and terror. I was almost too afraid to turn around, worried whatever I had seen would slip through the door. But then my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, breaking through the darkness. I glanced at the screen, half expecting it to be a friend teasing me about the house. Instead, it was a notification, a picture from a local forum. I opened it, my breath catching in my throat. The post was titled, "Lost Children of Millwood, the Forgotten." In the photo were familiar faces, one of whom looked eerily like the girl in my basement. I felt queasy. The weight of the past crushed down on me. Who were they? Why were they here? And as I stumbled back, I realized the tapping had returned, this time at the window. And it was not just the laughter I heard now, it was a chorus of voices. "Come play with us." I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My hands trembled as I clutched my phone. I debated calling the authorities, but what would I say? I saw a strange girl in my basement, and now I hear voices. They'd think I was losing it. The tapping on the window grew louder. I turned to face it, the curtains swaying slightly with the breeze. My mind raced. Should I just leave? The thought of going back to that basement sent a wave of nausea through me. But I had to know more about the girl and the voices. I couldn't let whatever it was frighten me into submission. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. I stepped into the kitchen, away from the door, hoping a little distance would help clear my thoughts. I needed a plan. Maybe if I could gather more information, I'd figure out what was going on. As I stood there, a slight feeling of courage surged through me. I pulled up the forum on my phone again. Scrolling through the comments, I searched for details. One post caught my eye. It mentioned a tragic fire that had happened decades ago, resulting in the disappearance of several children. The last line sent a chill down my spine. They say the spirits of those lost still wander the streets, calling for playmates. Was that real? Were those children the same as the girl from the basement? I felt sick. If these kids were still around, they weren't just ghosts, they were trapped somehow. Then the laughter returned, louder now, as if echoing off the very walls of my home. I knew I had to confront whatever this was. I crept back toward the living room and aimed my flashlight at the window, blinking against the sudden brightness. I peered through the curtain. Nothing. In fact, the street was completely empty. No sign of life, just the swirling leaves dancing in the wind. I was about to turn away when a faint giggle ripped through the silence. My heart dropped. I forced myself not to react, but then I caught another flicker of movement, something darting behind a nearby tree. A small figure. Instinct took over as I opened the front door and stepped outside. The chill in the air heightened the unnatural atmosphere. I stepped cautiously down the porch steps, heart racing with every shift of the leaves underfoot. "Hello?" I called out, voice wavering slightly. There was no answer, but the laughter continued, echoing from all around. I felt like I was losing my grip. The shadows of the trees danced around me, making every shape look suspicious. Then, something brushed past my leg, causing me to jump. I turned sharply, my flashlight beam revealing a small dog, scurrying past with a tennis ball in its mouth. Relief washed over me for a split second until I heard the laughter again, this time clear as day, right behind me. I whipped around, but all I could see was darkness. Then, out of nowhere, the girl from the basement appeared, standing at the edge of the yard, her shadow elongated by the light. "Come play with us," she said softly, the same haunting words lacing through the air. Suddenly, I felt a prickling at the back of my neck, and I knew I wasn't alone. I was surrounded. The girl's voice echoed in my head, and an instinctive chill ran down my spine. My eyes locked onto hers, and I felt as if I were staring into an endless void. Then, just like that, the laughter swept back in, washing over me in waves. It wasn't just her, it was as if a chorus of voices joined in. I felt the urge to run, but my feet seemed glued to the ground. "What do you want?" I croaked, my voice breaking the thick tension. The girl stepped closer, her face barely illuminated by the flashlight, shadows dancing on her features. Play with us," she said again, tilting her head to the side as if gauging my response. Though her words were innocent, dread gnawed at my insides. There was something unsettling in her tone. Behind her, I glimpsed more movement, shadows flickering and darting. I wasn't just surrounded by her. There were more of them, lurking just beyond the beam of my light. I swallowed hard and took a step back. It was impossible to see them clearly, but I sensed their gazes, hungry and expectant. I felt the cold bite of the night deepening, as if drawing me into their world. "I can't play," I stammered. "I have to go back inside." The girl's smile faded. "Stay with us," she whispered, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. A wave of frustration surged through me, faltering my resolve. I didn't want to engage, but something in her plea pulled at me. Just then, a rustling sound broke through the laughter. My flashlight flickered. Without thinking, I pointed it toward the sound, heart plummeting when it landed on a set of pale, small hands gripping the trunk of the tree. Behind it stood another child, then another. There were at least 3 more, their faces obscured in shadows. I took another step back, nearly stumbling as I wrestled with the fear swarming inside me. They were all staring. Silent. Watching. "What do you want?" I shouted into the night, desperation creeping into my voice. The laughter paused, and an eerie stillness settled over the yard. "Play with us," the girl said, sounding more like a command than an invitation. I wanted to scream, to run inside and lock the door. But as I turned, I saw a glimmer of something at the corner of my eye, a broken toy, half buried in the leaves. It was a little doll, its porcelain face chipped and cracked, yet somehow not entirely lost. Confusion clouded my thoughts. Was this another clue? A piece of their story? What is this? I stepped closer, reaching out, but the moment my fingers brushed the doll, a sharp whisper sliced through the air. "Don't leave us." I recoiled as a feeling of sorrow washed over me. The laughter resumed, but this time, it echoed with something darker, mingling with rage. The shadows around me started to pulse, as if breathing. Fear gripped my chest. "Why are you doing this?" I yelled, but my heart pounded so hard I felt faint. Their faces warped in the shadows, and the girl took another slow step forward. "You have to play." Her eyes glistened, reflecting the moonlight, and in that moment, the world tilted. Everything withdrew, plunging me into colder darkness. Then, nothing. Silence enveloped me, and I felt a sickening pull, as if I were being dragged down. That's when I saw the basement door behind the girl swinging wide open, inviting me back into its depths. My pulse quickened again. I had no idea what was waiting for me down there. I took a shaky breath. The darkness beyond the basement door felt like a void. Was that where they wanted me to go? My instincts screamed to flee, to bolt for the safety of my house, yet my curiosity held me captive. I glanced back at the children. Their eerily patient gazes bored into me, amplifying the tension. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, surprised the words even came out. The girl stepped closer, dragging a finger across the ground, tracing an unseen line in the dirt. Her eyes sparkled with mischief, like she found my fear entertaining. "We're just like you," she murmured, her voice a soft melody that still managed to chill my bones. "Just like me," I repeated. If that were true, then why did everything about them scream danger? I was alive, and they felt like shadows, echoes of something that didn't quite belong to this world. The laughter flitted through the air again, more haunting this time. It felt like the very walls of my mind were vibrating with its buzz. I turned my attention back to the basement door, tempted to find some answers within that suffocating darkness would yield. As I stepped toward it, the laughter quieted, replaced by a heavy silence. With each step I took, I felt the air cool further, the chill wrapping around me like faint fingertips. The basement beckoned like a siren, the air thick with anticipation. My hand trembled as it hovered over the door's handle just before pulling it down. A low creak echoed as the door swung open further, revealing a steep staircase descending into blackness. I hesitated, my heart in my throat. Was there really something down there waiting for me, or something worse waiting for me out here? "Are you coming?" the girl asked, her smile returning while the other shadows fell back into silence, waiting. Their anticipation was palpable. I inched closer to the edge of the door, peering into the pitch-dark abyss below. I could feel a strange energy charging from the basement, as if that space had been sewn together with secrets. Just as I was about to step inside, I heard a quiet but powerful whisper drifting from below. "Join us," it purred seductively. The sound was mesmerizing, drawing me closer, but my instincts clawed at me to retreat. I pulled back and glanced around. What if stepping inside led to something from which I couldn't return? "I can't do this," I murmured, shaking my head. "This isn't right." "Why not?" the girl countered, tilting her head again. "It's just play, it's fun." The word fun was said with such innocence, yet I could feel the lie drape over it like a shroud. Suddenly, a heavy thump resonated from the basement, making me jump. It almost sounded like something landing wrong, something that didn't belong. My heart raced, and I turned to face the shadows. No longer still, they shifted restlessly as if they too awaited my decision. Before I could think any further, a loud bang erupted from the inside of the house, the sound of something heavy falling. I stumbled back, eyes wide. What was that? The children erupted in laughter again, a wild cacophony that rose like a storm. "Playtime is just beginning," the girl said, her smile widening. I felt the walls closing around me, a rush of urgency swelling inside. "We're waiting, don't you want to know what's down there?" That's when I knew I had to make a choice. The laughter crescendoed, a sinister symphony pressing against my ears. I was trapped in the crosshairs of their game, and it felt as if the whole world was pulling me under. The laughter echoed in my mind, twisting and turning like a serpent waiting to strike. I glanced back at the children, their faces illuminated by the faint light from the house, and my gut told me I needed to act fast. I couldn't stay here, immobilized by fear. Then, without thinking, I took a quick step forward and down the stairs. The wood creaked under my weight, and I felt my heart racing as the darkness enveloped me. The air felt thick and heavy, a shroud that seemed to close in around me. At the bottom, I could barely make out the rough shape of walls, the shadows casting strange angles that danced eerily. I reached out a hand to smooth the edge of the wall to steady myself, the surface cool and uninviting against my fingertips. Then, I heard a rustle behind me, like whispers caught in a breeze, and I whipped around. Was it the children? "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. "Down here," a low voice responded, coming from deeper in the shadow. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I knew it was one of them, but this voice was different, thicker, almost like it was coated in something sticky. I hesitated, my legs rooted to the spot, heart hammering against my chest. "Why don't you come play with us?" It sounded almost like a question, but there was a sinister undertone to it. Their play felt more like a trap. Suddenly, a flash of light burst from one of the cracked corners above, illuminating the room just long enough for me to see shapes creeping from the far side. They were moving closer, and I could feel panic rising. I darted to the right, searching for a way to escape. My eyes darted frantically around, seeking a door, a window, anything to get out of this suffocating darkness. A small thud echoed in the quiet, and I glanced back to see the girl standing at the staircase, her silhouette framed by the dim light above her. Behind her, I could see the others emerging, their movements fluid and unnatural. "Don't you want to join us?" she asked again, that same maddening smile plastered on her face. "Join you where?" I demanded, still ready to flee. What are you? The children giggled, and the sound tumbled through my mind like pebbles in a tumbler, eroding my resolve. You're already here, the girl whispered, her eyes glinting in the half-light. You're part of the game now. It hit me like a wave. They wanted to keep me here. In that moment, I realized they weren't just playing, they were hunting. No. I yelled, adrenaline kicking in. I charged toward what I hoped was the direction of the stairs, propelled by fear. But as I moved, the other shadows reached out, their fingers brushing my arms like cold wisps of air. A jolt ran through me, and I stumbled. It felt like they were pulling me back. I dug my nails into the ground, desperately seeking purchase against their invisible hold. Then everything went dark. One moment, I was fighting to stand my ground, the next, I lost all sense of direction, the floor beneath me vanished, and I felt gravity pulling me down. That's when I heard it again, the whisper, now a sinister chant drifting through the darkness. You're one of us now. Something clicked in my mind. I was in deeper trouble than I realized. I felt weightless as I plunged into the darkness. The chilling whisper wrapped around me, a haunting invitation that clawed at my sanity. Just as I thought I'd reached the bottom, the fall slowed, and I found myself abruptly dropped onto a cold, hard surface. Instinctively, I rolled to my feet, panic setting in as I scanned my surroundings. The air was thick with an acrid smell, something almost metallic mingled with the earthy scent of wet soil. My senses screamed at me that I was in a confined space, probably underground. I turned in circles, desperately seeking even a hint of light, but it was pitch black. Where are you? I called, my voice trembling as it echoed around me. The stillness that followed sent my pulse racing. Come play, the girl's voice floated through the darkness, taunting yet distant. I stumbled again, feeling my way along the wall. My fingers brushed against something slimy. I recoiled, nausea rolling in my stomach. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated from somewhere nearby, freezing me in place. It wasn't one of the children anymore. The realization twisted my insides. No longer just an eerie game, I was surrounded by something far more sinister. I couldn't tell if it was human or something else entirely. Who's there? I shouted, trying to mask my fear. The growl grew louder, the sound resonating deeper, vibrating through the very walls. I pressed my back against the cold surface, trying to be as small as possible. Then came another unsettling sound, scratching, clawing against the ground. It was getting closer. I needed to move. I took a tentative step forward, then another, careful to avoid any further contact with whatever had been lurking at my feet. Each movement felt like it could be my last, like I was trying to cross a tightrope suspended over a chasm. The growing tension made the air feel electric, and adrenaline surged through my veins. Hey! I shouted, my voice a mix of anger and fear. Come out. I'm not afraid of you. I wasn't sure who I was addressing, but I needed to tell myself that I was still in control. Then, out of the darkness, I saw a pair of glowing red eyes staring back at me. My breath caught, and for a moment, I couldn't move. They seemed to pierce right through me, filled with predatory hunger. Play with us, the voice hissed again, now a chant mixed with low laughter. They were all around me. I turned to run, desperation fueling every ounce of strength in my legs. As I sprinted blindly, I stumbled into something hard. Arms reached out, thin fingers grabbing my shirt, yanking me back. Stay! I kicked and twisted free, heart racing as I found a small opening, a crack in the wall where faint light flickered through. I lunged for it, squeezing through just as the growling and laughter intensified behind me. The realization that whatever was after me had other plans settled heavily in my chest. As I tumbled into the light, I felt a sudden rush of freedom and safety. But before I could fully comprehend my escape, I glanced back and saw a shadow moving swiftly away from the darkness, merging with the light. It wasn't the children. Their laughter echoed, more pronounced now, filling my ears with their sinister game. I scrambled to my feet and found myself outside a moonlit night, back in the familiar world, but everything felt wrong. I was free, but it didn't feel like a victory. I looked around, heart still pounding. It was too silent. Where were the children? I felt a new terror creeping in. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. But there was something else, a realization that I hadn't escaped at all. I wasn't alone in this town anymore. As I turned to head home, I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. There, in the shadows, the children stood waiting for me, and this time their smiles felt sharper. I took a hesitant step back, the chill of the night clinging to my skin. Shadows danced just beyond the reach of the streetlight, their outlines shifting and merging. The children's eyes glinted in the dark, reflecting moonlight like predator and prey. "Where have you been?" Their voices chimed in unison, sweet but laced with menace. I could feel their gaze sweeping over me, each of them trying to measure my fear. "We've missed you," another child said, and I could hear a hint of mockery. I stammered, my mind racing. I had to find a way out of this. I glanced around, looking for an escape route, but every possible path felt invaded by the creeping darkness. One of the children stepped closer, her little fingers twirling a frayed doll. "You promised you'd play with us," she said sweetly, the stillness of her face unsettling me. I could sense her as an echo of the girl from the darkness. I am not playing anymore," I managed, voice shaking. "Not with any of you." The laughter erupted again, ringing out like a bell through the night air. Their laughter grew louder, until the sound morphed into something primal. "You should be afraid," one of them said, low and syrupy, the sinister edge sending chills down my spine. Before I could even process my next move, they began to circle me, slowly at first, then gaining speed, like wolves stalking. "It's more fun in the dark," another child called out, and I could feel the echoes of whispered secrets weaving around us. In a flash of instinct, I turned on my heel and ran. Each step felt heavy, as though the ground itself was trying to pull me back. My heart thumped wildly, drowning out the sound of their footsteps that quickly came behind me. I dashed towards a nearby alley, the spaces between the buildings narrow and claustrophobic. I could barely breathe as I squeezed through, my shoulders scraping against the cold brick. I thought I was gaining distance since their laughter was fading, but when I glanced back, I caught a glimpse of them still following, shadows merging and reforming. Then, as if the universe aligned against me, a figure loomed ahead. It was a twisted silhouette, blocking off the other end of the alley. I skidded to a halt, panic rising in my throat, and tried to turn back. But there they were, closing in from both sides. "What do you want?" I shouted, desperation bleeding into my voice. The figure took a step closer, and I could make out more details. A crooked smile stretched across a face that looked too fragile, too familiar. Another child wore a mask of darkness that shifted and danced like a flame. In that moment, I realized something horrible. Their faces mirrored those of the children I once knew, their eyes aglow with unrelenting hunger. "You were supposed to join us," they chanted, voices echoing through the hollow alley. "Come play forever." I turned to run again, but the walls felt like they were closing in, the laughter echoing, drowning out my cries. Everything became a blur of darkness and fear. Just then, a thud sounded behind me, and I barely noticed what I had collided with, a small wooden door half hidden in the shadows. That's when I saw it, a name carved into the wood. Familiar but twisted. Before I had a chance to register the words, the world around me darkened, another level of terror unfurling. I reached for the door, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped, caught between the children and whatever waited out of sight. What did they want from me? I was starting to sense that I had stumbled into something much deeper than a simple game. But the answers I sought only triggered more dread. I hadn't finished playing. The pressure of their laughter hung heavy in the air, threading through the alley like smoke. I couldn't catch my breath as I threw myself against the door, willing it to give way. Just when I thought my silence would crush me under the weight of their anticipation, the door creaked open. With no time to think, I stumbled through, slamming it shut behind me as hardest I could. I pressed my back against the wood, feeling the vibrations of their displeasure filter through, rough and relentless. It felt like they were right outside, their whispers slipping through the cracks. I was in a small, dimly lit room, the atmosphere stale and stagnant. Faint moonlight filtered through a grimy window, but the space was otherwise barren aside from a pile of ripped cloth and cardboard strewn around. My heart raced, and the walls felt like they were closing in. What now? I frantically glanced around for an escape route, a way to lose myself in the night. My eyes caught on a small door at the far end. It seemed old, with peeling paint that barely clung to the wood. It held a promise of freedom, the whisper that maybe it would lead somewhere safe, perhaps back to the world where light chased shadows away. Taking a deep breath, I slowly approached, calm wrapping around my racing thoughts. I felt the shadows pressing in from the main room nearer, closer, hearing the laughter fading, replaced by soft cries, almost pitiful. I pulled the handle surprisingly, it turned easily. The door swung open, revealing a staircase that led upward. I took a step inside, then another, trying to keep my footfalls light. The air was cooler here, tinged with the scent of damp earth, but when I glanced back, the door behind me had vanished. I continued climbing, my breath louder than the whispers that lingered just beyond the bottom of the stairs. For a moment, I let the hope swell within me, convincing myself I might finally find a way out. As I reached the top, I stepped out into a small, windowless room. A faint beam of moonlight broke through a crack in the ceiling, illuminating the dust swirling through the air. I took a moment to regain my composure before scanning the walls. They were covered in more strange drawings, faces, birds, and overlapping hands, all chaotic and haunting. That's when I felt it again, the laughter, echoing faintly beneath the surface, the remnants of their game, like fingernails scratching at glass. I didn't belong here, not in their world, not among the echoes of something lost. Suddenly, I heard the sound of soft footsteps approaching. My heart plummeted. I pressed my back against the wall, holding my breath. Just as I turned to look, I saw her, the girl standing in the shadows, grinning wide, her eyes glinting with that eerie light. "Why did you leave us?" she asked softly, as if the question held an innocent weight. I could hardly speak. I thought of everything, the shadows, the whispers, their haunting game that felt like it would never let me go. "I don't want to play," I replied weakly. "I just want to go home." Her smile didn't fade, but there was something more curious in her expression now, a challenge, perhaps. "No one really leaves, we always find you." Behind her, shadows shifted, flickering outwards. I could sense them feeding off the darkness, hunting. Whatever magic bound them here threatened to drag me down with them. I felt trapped. But with a sudden rush of adrenaline, clarity shot through my fear, igniting active resolve. I couldn't let them pull me under, couldn't let the game continue. "I'm not scared of you," I shot back, fighting through the cold that gripped my chest. And with that, I took a step forward. Perhaps it was the anger at the flight or my own desire for freedom, but in that moment, I knew I had to break the hold they had over me. "Let me go!" I shouted, my voice echoing through the stillness. The shadows paused, and for a heartbeat, there was silence. I felt a pulse of energy crackle through the air, and a shimmer of uncertainty crossed her face. Maybe they didn't know what to do with someone who stood firm. But then the laughter returned, more frenzied, coming from behind her. They surged forward, a wave of darkness that reached for me. I dashed past them, heart hammering, racing through the other door leading out. The laughter faded into a cacophony of desperate cries, begging me to return, but I couldn't look back. I plunged into the narrow hallway beyond, finding a way to a light at the end, a luminous glow that promised safety. I burst from the corridor, flinging myself into the open air. A gasp of cool night breathed against my skin, and I took my first and deepest breath. But just as I stumbled into the moonlight, I took a look around, my heart dropping once again. I was back in the backyard of my house, the laughter muted, the shadows contrasting sharply against the luminous grass. I was outside. I had escaped, for now. But I felt the weight of their eyes in the darkness nearby, their laughter still echoing faintly in my mind. They hadn't left me. Sometimes, late at night, when the peace of solitude surrounds me, I can still hear them. Whispers carried by the wind. A tap on the window. Come play with us. I don't know if they'll ever truly fade away, and part of me wonders whether I'll find my way back to them. But for now, I hold on to the certainty I escaped their trap, even if I left part of myself behind. And when I catch glimpses of painted rocks on my doorstep, I hesitate to pick them up.